Wellsville, Saturday, May 13th, 1865. Today I gave a dinner for a party of citizens in return for the hospitable manner in which they have treated me. The party seemed to enjoy a Yankee dinner, and we did our best to give a fine spread and make them welcome. They were very curious about our troops and paid attention to all that they saw. Wellsville, Virginia, Sunday, May 14th, 1865. As we have no church to attend, I have spent the day making calls. I rode over to Wilson Station and called at brigade headquarters, and then made a call upon some ladies at a plantation near. It is quite amusing to meet many men who seem to be ignorant of the war. That is, they do not want to admit that they served in the rebel army. Many think that they are liable to arrest and trial for the part they have taken. I ask them all sorts of questions just for fun. Wellsville, Monday, May 15th, 1865. Today we have orders to be ready to move, so I have called in my guards and detachments and have made my farewell calls. I have many invitations to return and make visits after I become a citizen. Well, I am glad that I have succeeded in getting the goodwill of these people. Wilson Station, Virginia, Tuesday, May 16th, 1865. We left our camp at Wellsville this morning and marched to this place, where we joined our old brigade. We are to march to Richmond, where we are to have a chance to see the city and wait for orders. The march will be by easy stages, as there is no hurry, and I think we shall enjoy it. Wilson Station, Wednesday, May 17th, 1865. We are waiting for orders to start upon our march to Richmond. The weather is good, and we just enjoy soldiering under such pleasant circumstances. The road to Richmond will take us through the country that is now historic, and we shall get an idea of the inside of the late Southern Confederacy. Near Petersburg, Virginia, Thursday, May 18th, 1865. We left camp at Wilson Station and took the road to Richmond, making easy marches. Friday, May 19th, 1865. At last I have been through Petersburg. This morning we commenced our march through the city. Petersburg is a fine little city, and it was hard to realize, as we tramped its peaceful streets, that we had been nearly a year getting into it. The city shows the effect of Yankee shot and shell. The stores are open and mostly kept by men from the north. The buildings near the railroad are badly damaged by the fire from the Union batteries. The people came out to see us pass, but did not make any audible comment. Well, I was glad to see the place that had caused us so much bloodshed. Near Manchester, Virginia, Saturday, May 20th, 1865. We arrived at this place, which is opposite Richmond on the James River, at 9 o'clock this morning. On the march, we passed near the rebel Fort Darling and saw a good many other forts. Around this, the south side of the city, there appear to be 4 lines of strong works. This afternoon, Sergeant Smith, Adjutant Smith, and myself rode into Richmond. We passed through Manchester, which is a small town and much dilapidated, and crossed the James River on a pontoon bridge. The first thing that I noticed was a brick building with a large sign, Libby Prison. We rode down, dismounted, and went in. It made my blood boil to remember that in this hole, so many of our brave boys died from starvation. We then took a look at Castle Thunder, another prison, and found it nothing but a brick building once used as a storehouse. From here, we rode to the Spotswood Hotel and then to the Ballard House. We then took a look at the Capitol, which sheltered the rebel Congress, and whose walls heard much treasonable talk. The Capitol stands in a fine park in which is a famous statue of Washington. Jefferson, Mason, Clay, and Patrick Henry stand guard over it. Here, under the eye of Washington, treason was plotted and traitors made their plans. The courthouse was destroyed by fire with a good part of the business portion of the city. It was the work of the rebel General Ewell. Near the Capitol stands a fine granite building once used as the rebel Treasury Department, but now as the First National Bank of Richmond. This building was draped in mourning in memory of President Lincoln. Riding up Franklin Street, we passed many fine residences, with ladies at the windows accompanied by ex-rebel officers. Just before dark, we returned to camp, well pleased with our first visit to Richmond, near Manchester, Sunday, May 21st, 1865. After the usual inspection, I rode into Richmond intending to attend church, but found that the churches were not open in the afternoon. I went into the park and listened to a band that was playing. Many ladies were walking in the park, some escorted by Union and some by rebel officers. 1/4 of our men are allowed to visit Richmond daily, and in this way, all of the soldiers will have a chance to see the late rebel capital. I think that this is right, for the boys have earned the right to see the city captured by their valor. Near Manchester, Virginia, Monday, May 22nd, 1865. Last night we had a terrible storm of wind and rain. My tent blew down and I got wet. We managed, by the help of the guard, to pitch the tent again, but I was too wet to sleep. Fortunately, the sun came out this morning and made us comfortable. Adjutant Smith and I rode into Richmond for dinner and found some strawberries and cream. Near Manchester, Virginia, Tuesday, May 23rd, 1865. I have remained in camp today, making preparations for our march to Washington, which will begin tomorrow, and for the review as we pass through Richmond. The road is a long one and the weather is very hot, but we are going towards home. Hanover Courthouse, Virginia, Wednesday, May 24th, 1865. We left Manchester this morning and marched through Richmond, passing in review before Major General Halleck, United States Army. The people looked on with indifference, but a party of colored children sang John Brown to us as we marched along. We are camped near the battlefield of 1862, and it brings many sad memories to our minds. Then we were bound for Richmond. Now we are bound for home, sweet home. Camp 20 miles south of Fredericksburg, Saturday, May 27th, 1865. Here we are, so far on our journey, but the mud is so deep from recent rains that we have had to stop for a while. Reveille is sounded at 3:30 a.m., and we leave camp at 5 a.m. and march until 2 p.m., then go into camp. We like this, as it gives us a chance to see the country. Near Fredericksburg, Virginia, Monday, May 29th, 1865. We left camp this morning, the sun having dried up the mud, and are now encamped on the old battlefield of Fredericksburg. How well I remember the dark days of December 1862 and May 1863, when we buried so many of our brave boys on these fields. Thank God it is all over, and tonight we sleep without pickets. Tuesday, May 30th, 1865. This morning we marched through the streets of Fredericksburg and found the old town quite in ruin. It seemed queer to march down the street where, in 1863, May 3rd, we dodged the rebel shell. We made about 17 miles today and have a pleasant camp for the night. I like to march without any enemy near much better than where we were looking for him or he for us. Camp near Fairfax Courthouse, Virginia, Thursday, June 1st, 1865. We left camp this morning and crossed Wolf Run Shoals, and not for the first time either. Here we are at the spot where we camped when we went to Bull Run. At that time, I hardly thought that I should ever be in command of the 2nd Rhode Island Volunteers. Halls Hill, Virginia, opposite Washington, Friday, June 2nd, 1865. We arrived here today and have pitched our camp. I think I have made my last long march as a soldier. It is singular that we made our last march today over the same road that we made our first march on in going to Bull Run. We left Fairfax Courthouse this morning and made about 15 miles today. The march from Richmond has been rather a hard one, but it is over at last. An order has been received directing the muster out of men whose time will expire before October 1st, 1865. This will take about 100 men out of my regiment, but will leave a good command. Halls Hill, Saturday, June 3rd, 1865. We are having a good rest after our long march, and the men enjoy it. Hall's Hill, Sunday, June 4th, 1865. Sunday again, and my camp is full of visitors. A party of Rhode Island people made me a call, and I had a dress parade for their benefit. They seemed to enjoy the parade by the veteran Rhode Island troops. Hall's Hill, Virginia, Monday, June 5th, 1865. 4 years ago today, I enlisted as a boy in the Army. I was proud to be a corporal, and prouder still to be a soldier. Today, as I look back, I cannot realize that I have seen the beginning and the end of the great Civil War. But such is the fact, and I devoutly thank God for it. On these anniversaries, I always sit down and think over the events of the past and derive much satisfaction. Hall's Hill, Tuesday, June 6th, 1865. Our camp is not a very pleasant one, but if we remain long, it will be changed. This morning, the 119th Pennsylvania Volunteers, Colonel Hickman of our brigade, left for home. We paraded and saluted as they passed. It made me feel homesick to see them leave, but our turn will come someday. We are making preparations for the review of the 6th Corps, which will take place next Thursday. All the men of our brigade have been furnished with new uniforms, and we expect to make a fine show. Although so near Washington, yet I see very little of it. June 7th, 1865. Still at work getting ready for the review. The 2nd Rhode Island will look well. Made a visit to Washington and the capital. Thursday, June 8th, 1865. The day has come and gone, and the review is over. We left camp just at daylight and marched to Long Bridge, where we crossed, and the Corps was massed on Maryland Avenue and other streets. At 9 o'clock, the march began. President Johnson, with other dignitaries, was seated upon a platform in front of the White House. They received us very kindly, but the people, with the exception of the ladies who waved their handkerchiefs, were very quiet. We expected to meet with a warm reception, as the 6th Corps saved Washington in 1864, but evidently reviews are played out with Washington people. The city was fearfully hot, and the men suffered much. I sent the regiment to camp by way of Georgetown and Aqueduct Bridge, and I remained in the city to dine with friends. I returned to camp this evening. The 2nd Rhode Island looked well in their new clothes and white gloves. Friday, June 9th, 1865. This morning I paid my respects to Mrs. General Edwards, who is staying with her husband, our brigade commander, in camp. In the evening I called upon General Wheaton. General Meade is to go to Philadelphia to command the Department of the Atlantic. Sunday, June 11th, 1865. It is rumored now that the 2nd Rhode Island Volunteers is to remain in service and may be made a part of the regular army. Well, all right, I think this would suit me. After inspection today, I made some calls, but have spent most of the day in my tent. Saturday, June 17th, 1865. Last night, Colonel Thomas S. Allen, commanding 5th Wisconsin of our brigade, gave a grand supper to the field and staff officers of our brigade. The 5th is to go home in a few days. General Wheaton and General Edwards were present. The camp was illuminated and presented a fine appearance. The officers of the 5th presented Colonel Allen with an elegant 6th Corps badge. Speeches kept us busy until 11 o'clock. June 19th, 1865, Monday. General Wheaton thinks that the 2nd Rhode Island Volunteers will remain in service for a long time yet. Company E, Captain James A. Bowen, was mustered out of service today and will leave for home tomorrow. Tuesday, June 20th, 1865. Company E left camp for Rhode Island today. Captain Bowen was the senior captain, and this leaves Captain Stephen Thurber as senior captain. My regiment is reduced by the muster out of Company E, but is still as large as most of the regiments remaining in the field. Thursday, June 22nd, 1865. Today, Colonel Benedict and wife, Mr. Manley, and Miss Emily Marie came out from Washington and spent the day in camp. They brought ice cream, cake, pies, lemons, etc., and we had a fine time. They returned to the city this evening. Mrs. Benedict brought me a lot of bedding for my tent. I now have 2 wall tents floored and arranged very finely. The 37th Massachusetts Volunteers left for home today, and the 2nd Rhode Island escorted them towards the city. General Edwards has been mustered out of service, and as I am senior officer, I have taken command of the brigade by order of General Wheaton. Friday, June 30th, 1865. The week has passed as usual, drill and inspections, etc. Today I mustered the regiment for pay. The Army of the Potomac has ceased to exist. Our corps has been reduced to a division, as have all the other corps. Immediately after the 4th of July, the Army is to march to the Monocacy River near the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad in Maryland and go into camp. General Horatio G. Wright is to command the Army, and General Wheaton a brigade. I do not know whether my regiment will be placed in Wheaton's or Hamblin's brigade. Either will suit me. I am going to Rhode Island in 1 week to be married and return with my wife to camp. I have all my furniture made and everything in readiness for housekeeping. Lieutenant Colonel Clendenin of Wheaton's staff is to remain in service, and Mrs. Clendenin will be with him. Our camp will be about 40 miles from Washington, and being on the line of the railroad will be quite handy for us. Just how long we shall remain in service I cannot say, but it will probably be for a year. Some of the officers want to stay, while others prefer to go home. I am indifferent, but determined to see the end of the 2nd Rhode Island Volunteers, or die in service. Halls Hill, Virginia, Saturday, July 1st, 1865. We are hard at work getting ready to move to our new camp in Maryland. We are at present in the 3rd Brigade, commanded by General Joseph E. Hamblin, who has relieved me from command. We expect to be transferred to the 1st Brigade, commanded by General Truman Seymour. Halls Hill, Virginia, Sunday, July 2nd, 1865. Today I rode into Georgetown and called upon James F. Benedict and family. They are very kind to me, and it seems like going home to visit them. I have applied for a leave of absence and shall leave for home just as soon as I can get my regiment into the new camp in Maryland. Halls Hill, Virginia, Monday, July 3rd, 1865. We are making great preparations for the celebration of the 4th tomorrow. I have ordered taps postponed tonight until 10 o'clock, and the men are having a fine time parading about and shouting. I called at the War Department in Washington to see about the muster out of my regiment. They told me that we should probably remain in service at least 1 year, so we have settled down for a life in the Army in time of peace. Well, all right, if my plans work well, I can stand it. I shall give a dinner party tomorrow to the officers and friends in Washington and Georgetown. If the weather is fine, we shall have a good time and try to give the men an enjoyable day. I like to please my men whenever I can, for it makes them more content with a soldier's life. Halls Hill, Tuesday, July 4th, 1865. Another Independence Day in the Army, and this has been my 5th. The 1st we passed at Camp Clark near Washington, the 2nd at Harrison's Landing, the 3rd at Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, the 4th at Petersburg, and today we are back at Washington with our work finished. We have had a fine time today with a large party of ladies and gentlemen from Washington, who, with the officers of the 2nd Rhode Island, dined at my headquarters. We managed to make a fine spread. The Sergeant Major, Benoni Sweet, amused the party by a tightrope walking exhibition. The day has been fun. Wednesday, July 5th, 1865. I have passed most of the day in Washington, dancing attendance upon the War Department. Some time ago, an order was issued from the War Department consolidating the men of the 4th and 7th Rhode Island Volunteers with the 2nd Rhode Island Volunteers. The order was in some way lost, and the men did not report. Today I had the matter arranged, and shall expect these men in a few days. Thursday, July 6th, 1865. We expect to move to our new camp in Maryland next Monday, and I shall leave for home as soon as I can place the regiment in their new camp. Friday, July the 7th, 1865. No news, as we are busy getting our accumulated traps packed up ready to move. Since peace was declared, I allow the men to have more things and want to save them for future use. Hall's Hill, Virginia, Saturday, July 8th, 1865. Well, here we go. Instead of Maryland, it is Rhode Island, so I reckon I will give up the idea of a 10 days leave from the Army and take one for life. Last night, I received an order to prepare the rolls for the muster out of the 2nd Rhode Island. Of course, there was great rejoicing in camp, and everybody is happy at the prospect of home and friends. It will take some days to make out all the papers, but we shall start for Rhode Island within a week, I think. Sunday, July 9th, 1865. Although I want to go home, yet as I think of the separation from comrades, some of whom I have known for more than 4 years, I cannot help feeling sad. I trust I entered the Army with pure motives and from love of country. I have tried to keep myself from evil ways and believe that I have never forgotten that I am a Christian. Thank God no spirituous liquors have ever passed my lips as a beverage, and I feel that I can go home to my family as pure as when I left them as a boy of 19 years. I have been successful in my Army life simply because I have always been ready and willing to do my duty. I thank God that I have had an opportunity of serving my country, freeing the slaves, and restoring the Union. Monday, July 10th, 1865. The time draws near. Tuesday, July 11th, 1865. My men are wild with joy, and many plans are being made. Wednesday, July 12th, 1865. The rolls are finished, and we are to be mustered out of service tomorrow. I have written my last letter from the Army today. Thursday, July 13th, 1865. Today the 2nd Rhode Island paraded and were mustered out of service from the day when disbanded in Providence. I am arranging the transportation and shall start tomorrow or next day. Friday, July 14th, 1865. We are waiting, but tomorrow we shall probably start. Goodbyes have been said to the few left behind. Most of the troops have already gone home, but very few are left. Saturday, July 15th, 1865. Goodbye, camp at Hall's Hill. Goodbye, Virginia. Goodbye, Army. Dear old Army of the Potomac, tattered and torn, you are crowned with the victor's laurels at last. We are to leave at 9 o'clock a.m. today. New York, Sunday, July 16th, 1865. We arrived here this morning after a day and night on the road. The 58th Massachusetts Volunteers came on the train. I put the 2nd Rhode Island into the park at Castle Garden and closed the gate. I propose to take my regiment home in good condition. I have telegraphed to Governor James Y. Smith, and he has authorized me to charter a steamer. On board steamer, July the 16th, 1865. I left Castle Garden about 4 o'clock and made a fine march up Broadway past the Herald office, our men giving the Herald 3 cheers. I then embarked on the steamer for New Haven, which is the only point I could get transportation to. The 58th Massachusetts Volunteers, Lieutenant Colonel John C. Whittier, is on board this same boat. New Haven, Connecticut, Monday morning, 6 o'clock, July 17th. We arrived this morning in a rainstorm. I got breakfast at the New Haven house, and the men ate from their haversacks under the coal sheds on the wharf. I have just procured a train of cars to take the regiment to New London. Groton, Connecticut, 3 p.m. We arrived at New London about noon, and I was surprised to be called out of the car by a committee from the city council, who announced that a collation was waiting for our men in the street near the depot. We gladly accepted and were waited upon by the pretty girls of New London. The dinner was fine and much enjoyed by our men. We then crossed to this place by the ferry and will take cars soon. I have telegraphed to Providence to have horses ready for myself and staff. My horse Katie started with us, but I do not know where she is now. Providence, Rhode Island, Tuesday, July 18th, 1865. Here we are, at home, sweet home. We left Groton last night about 4 o'clock, but the train was slow, and we did not reach Providence until midnight. Here I found a militia company commanded by a Colonel Bennett waiting for us. But as it was so late, I declined an escort or to parade. I marched the men into a hall where they partook of a collation, and then sent the regiment to the barracks of the Veteran Reserve Corps on the Cove lands to sleep. I found, much to my joy, that the car containing my horse Katie had been attached to our train, and mounting, I rode home and then sent her to a stable by my orderly, Zach Chase. This morning my staff reported at my mother's, and I rode down to Exchange Place, where the adjutant formed the regiment in line. I marched them to the Cove lands, and after forming line gave my last commands: order arms, parade rest. I then briefly addressed the officers and men and gave them furloughs to report when notice was given through the papers. I cautioned them to behave like men and soldiers and to wear their uniforms until finally discharged. The officers gathered about me, and we said our farewells. The men gave 9 cheers for the colonel, and then broke ranks, and I took every man by the hand and said goodbye. My eyes were full of tears, and I felt sad, for I knew these men, and they had always stood by me. Some of them I had served with in the ranks, and I felt a warm affection for them all. I have, present and absent, 18 officers and 438 enlisted men, nearly all of whom were present. Major Henry H. Young is absent, serving on General Sheridan's staff, and 1 officer is absent wounded. I then rode to the governor's office and reported my return home. Providence, Rhode Island, Friday, July 28th, 1865. Today, the 2nd Rhode Island was paid off and discharged. The regiment met at 9 a.m. and without arms marched to a building on South Main Street, where they received their money and final discharge papers. About noon, the paymaster told me that I was the only man left in the regiment and that he would be ready to pay me at 2 p.m. I went home, took off my uniform, and put on a suit of civilian clothes for the first time in over 4 years. I then went down to the office and received my pay and discharge. As I came out of the building, I found the regiment, yes, my regiment, drawn up on the sidewalk, and again I took each man by the hand. It was sad, yet joyful, for the war is over and we are at home. No more suffering, no more scenes of carnage and death. Thank God it is over and that the Union is restored. And so, at last, I am a simple citizen. Well, I am content, but should my country call again, I am ready to respond. The governor has given me a commission as colonel for gallant conduct during the war. But what are honors now compared to the delights of peace and home? 4 years and 58 days I served my country, and now I am content to be a civilian. I am proud of my old regiment and shall ever think of my comrades with pleasure. Elisha H. Rhodes, Colonel, 2nd Rhode Island Volunteers. That concludes the 17th and last part of the story. Thank you very much for listening. Please subscribe for more episodes and leave a comment.